A Nazi doctor stood inside Auschwitz and selected which prisoners would live and which would die, not out of military necessity but out of scientific curiosity. His name was Josef Mengele, and when the war ended, he walked free. For decades. That detail alone should stop you cold. But Mengele is just the surface. Beneath the battles and the politics and the official history, World War II hides a layer of documented facts so disturbing that several governments actively suppressed them for 30 years after the war ended. 30 years. By the time the full picture emerged, most of the perpetrators had already died in comfortable retirement. Stay with this, because by the end, you'll be asking the same question historians have been asking since the archives opened. How much of this did the Allies actually know? Let's start in the Pacific. Harbin, China, a facility that didn't officially exist. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research unit of the Imperial Japanese Army. Between 1935 and 1945, its scientists conducted live human experiments on an estimated 3,000 prisoners, Chinese, Korean, Russian, and Allied POWs. They tested plague, cholera, frostbite, and vivisection, without anesthesia. The prisoners inside Unit 731 were never referred to by name. They were called Maruta, logs. And here's the part nobody talks about. When American forces discovered the program after Japan's surrender, they didn't prosecute the scientists. They made a deal. In exchange for the experimental data that could not be ethically reproduced, General Douglas MacArthur granted immunity to Unit 731's leadership. The lead researcher, Shiro Ishii, died in 1959, a free man, gone, just like that. Now move west, back to Europe, back to a program the United States ran on its own soil. Operation Paperclip. You may have heard the name, but the full scope of it is rarely discussed in the same breath as the atrocities that made it possible. After the war, the United States Office of Strategic Services secretly recruited over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians, many of them former Nazi Party members, and brought them to America to work on military and space programs. Werner von Braun, the architect of the V-2 rocket that killed thousands of British civilians, became the lead engineer of NASA's Saturn V rocket that put men on the moon. That detail changes everything about how we frame the space race. The State Department and Army altered or destroyed Nazi records to allow these men entry. The program was classified for decades. When it was finally declassified, the sheer number of individuals involved forced a quiet reassessment of what the post-war period actually looked like behind closed doors. Nobody expected what came next, because the third fact comes not from the Axis powers, but from inside the Allied scientific establishment itself. In 1943, the U.S. Army Chemical Corps began secret human experiments testing mustard gas and other chemical agents on American soldiers at Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland and at a facility in San Jose Island, Panama. Soldiers were not told what they were being exposed to. Many were segregated by race, with African American and Puerto Rican soldiers disproportionately used as test subjects in separate trials. According to congressional investigations and declassified records, tens of thousands of American servicemen were affected, with some estimates placing the number as high as 60,000, making it one of the largest non-consensual human experiments conducted on U.S. soil. It remained classified until the 1990s. 60,000. Now, back to Josef Mengele. He escaped to South America in 1949 using a Red Cross humanitarian passport issued under a false name. He lived in Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. West German authorities issued a warrant for his arrest in 1959. Interpol was notified, and yet, for 30 years, he was never caught. He drowned in Brazil in 1979. His remains weren't positively identified until 1985, confirmed by forensic analysis in 1992. Mengele performed experiments on twins, dwarfs, and people with physical anomalies. He injected chemicals into children's eyes, attempting to change their color. He conducted selections on the Auschwitz-Birkenau platform, personally deciding the fate of hundreds of thousands of arriving prisoners, the majority of whom were sent directly to the gas chambers. And he spent his final years on a beach. This is where the case breaks open, because here's what the documented record forces us to confront. The horror of World War II wasn't only the war itself. It was the systematic choices made after the war, Choices about who to prosecute, who to protect, what to classify, and what to quietly forget. The Nuremberg trials indicted 24 individuals, and of those, 19 were convicted. Unit 731 researchers walked free. Over 1,000 Nazi scientists were relocated to the West. 60,000 American soldiers were experimented on without consent and told nothing for 50 years. Remember what I said at the start, that Mengele walked free for decades. The question the archives keep raising isn't how that was possible. The question is who made it possible, and whether we've ever been given a complete answer.